Hello there. My name is Benson Kerry, and welcome to this project management certification course. I've been a corporate trainer for more than 10 years, and one of the areas that I have found to be very, very important is project management. It is very, very critical for you to be able to manage projects effectively, because in most areas of our lives, we are actually managing projects. So during this training, we're going to give you the skills that will make you a highly effective project manager, so that whatever project it is that you have in front of you, you can be able to ensure that it is not only effective, but also very efficient. Welcome to topic number 1, overview of project management. So in this session, we are going to learn what project management is, and also understand the environments in which projects operate. And by the end of this session, we should be able to define key terms in project management, and also understand the relationship of project management and other management disciplines. So let's get right into it. So what is project management? What comes to your mind when you hear the term project management? So PM, or project management, is an emerging management profession. It's an attempt to consolidate many roles that have been previously played independently by different organization skill sets. And we are going to see what we mean by different skill sets that project management is trying to bring together. So the best way to understand what project management is to differentiate it from organizational operations, because we could have something to do with organizational operations, and we could also have project management. If we can be able to differentiate the two, then we will be on our way to understanding what project management is. So organizations perform work. That's what we are saying. Work involves either operations or projects. And we are saying that these may share common characteristics. So whether it's a project or it's an organizational operation, number one, both of them are performed by people. Both of them are constrained by limited resources. Both of them are planned, executed, and controlled. We are saying that while operations are ongoing and repetitive, projects are temporary and unique. So from there, you can start seeing the differences now between organizational operations and projects. So we are saying that a project can thus be defined in terms of the distinctive characteristics. Yeah. So there's those things, there's those characteristics that make a project unique. And those are the terms, or those are the characteristics or features that we are going to use to define a project, and hence project management. So we're saying that it is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. So number one, it is temporary. It means that it has a definite beginning and end. It has a time frame. It has clearly defined objectives. It is unique. And then there's also what we call progression elaboration. We're saying that projects proceed in steps, continuing steadily. This means it will be broadly defined in early stages, and will be made more explicit and detailed as the project team develops a better and more complete understanding of the project. This is basically, in simple terms, it is what we call the learning curve. You realize that at the beginning of the project, maybe people don't know so much about that project, but as the project continues, you get a better understanding, and hence you refine your definition of that particular project. So we're saying that projects may be undertaken by organizations to respond to specific needs or requests that may not be met by day-to-day operations. So as we are going along, carrying out our operations, we may realize that we have a challenge that requires a specific project for it to be addressed, or for it to be solved. So in that situation, now we come together and we decide that this is the project, or this is, we need to come up with a project to handle that specific activity. And we have examples here. For example, development of a new product or service. That requires a project because it has a definite start date, a definite end, objectives, a specific budget, and all that. Or effecting organizational structural change. That's also something else that can be done very well using a project. For developing a new or modified information system, running a political campaign, constructing a building or facility. These are some of the things or some of the activities that can be put together to form a project. So project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. Now, we've seen what a project is. So the question that comes to mind is, so what is project management? Now, I would want us to start with the end product of project management, which is to meet project requirements. So whatever it is that you do to meet project requirements, that is project management. So what is that whatever? It is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities. So once you do that and you meet project requirements, then you're on your way to being an effective project manager. So we're saying that project management includes initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. And we are going to look at these steps in a later topic on each one of them and how we can actually carry them out as project manager or project managers. So project teamwork includes competing demands, that is the scope, time, cost, risk, and quality, and we're going to look into that. Stakeholders with differing needs and expectations, and identified requirements. So we are saying that many processes within project management are iterative in nature. The more you do a project, the more you get better at it. And now that takes us back to the learning curve that we talked about earlier. So project management, the goal of project management is to ensure that the project actually meets and maybe even exceeds project requirements or project objectives. So a project manager is an individual accountable for accomplishing stated project objectives. So if you are the person who is in charge of ensuring that the project objectives are met, then you are the project manager. So key responsibilities include creating clear and attainable project objectives. So that's one of the things that you'll be required to do, coming up with objectives, building the project requirements, and managing the triple project constraint for projects, which is cost, time, and scope. And we will look at those triple project constraints, and here they are. You see that there is the scope. If, for example, you're building a road, and you're told you're building 5 miles of a road, yeah, that's the scope. Schedule, that has to do with time. You're not going to build that 5 miles in 10 years. You're given 1 year or 2 years, okay? Cost, that is, you shouldn't go over budget. You're given 100 million to do that. So that is the cost. So you should ensure that your project is within those 3 constraints, that is scope, cost, and schedule. So we're saying that the triple project constraint is also referred to as a project management triangle, and we have seen that. It looks like a triangle. The discipline of project management is about providing the tools and techniques that enable the project team, and not just the project manager. You should work as a team to organize their work to meet these constraints. So what is a program? A program is a group of projects managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits that may not be available when they are managed individually. So sometimes you can bring projects together so that you can achieve a benefit that you may not be able to achieve when you do a project on its own. So that combination of projects is what we call a program. So projects are frequently divided into more manageable components referred to as sub-projects. And we're seeing that sub-projects are often contracted to an external enterprise or another functional unit in the performing organization. So we are saying that you may have sub-projects based on the project processes, phases, or according to the human resource skill requirements. For example, if you're building a house, you could have a sub-project for installation of plumbing or electrical works. Sometimes you see when these skyscrapers are coming up, you cannot have one company dealing with everything. It's not usually possible. You might find there's this company that is dealing with, the electrical work, another one dealing with security, another one dealing with the plumbing and all that. So those are what we are calling a sub-project. So I hope you understand the difference between sub-projects and programs. Programs, a group of projects brought together so that they can achieve one objective. Sub-project is one project but subdivided into different parts. So that is what project management is, and we are going to explain further as we move forward because we need to have that foundation on the project manager, organizational processes, and programs, and also sub-projects. If you're able to understand that at this particular point, then we are on our way to understanding the whole concept of project management. Welcome to topic number 2, the project management context. Now in this session, you will gain skills regarding the context in which projects are managed, and by the end of this session, you should be able to describe the environment in which projects operate and also understand the cultures and trends that affect project management. So we are saying that projects don't operate in a vacuum, they operate in an environment or in a context. And that context, to a large extent, affects how we manage projects. So we're saying that projects and project management operate in an environment that is larger than the project itself. The project management team must understand the overall setup to ensure the success of the project. A simple example, if you're operating or if you're carrying out a project, there's an organization within which that project is being managed. So that organization is part of the larger environment. They are stakeholders. So we're saying that some of the key aspects include project phases, project stakeholders, organizational influences, like the way we just mentioned, management skills, socioeconomic and environmental influences. So these are some of the larger contexts or aspects within which projects operate. So when it comes to managing stakeholder expectations, we are saying that this may be difficult since they usually have different objectives. And when you're managing a project, you might want to ask yourself, what are some of the stakeholder expectations that you might want to really take into consideration? Who are the different stakeholders? Yeah? What are their needs? And how are you going to be able to make your project meet the needs of these stakeholders, or more or less really balance? And we have examples. For example, the manager of a department may wish to have a low-cost system. The solution architect may emphasize technical excellence, and the solution developer will be interested in maximizing its profit. So you're seeing 3 people with 3 different expectations. Head of the research at an electronics firm may define the success of a product on the state-of-the-art technology. That's one. The head of a manufacturing firm may define success around world-class practices. And the head of marketing may be concerned with the number of new features. So what we are saying is you need to manage the expectations of all these stakeholders. You need to balance them as the project managers. So we are saying that organizations also develop unique and describable cultures. These are reflected in shared values, norms, beliefs, and expectation in their policies and procedures. So you as a project manager, you are operating within a specific cultural context, the culture that has been developed within that organization. And we are saying that examples of cultures that may influence the project include a team proposing high-risk approach may more likely secure approval in an aggressive or entrepreneurial organization. So you could be proposing a venture that is very high risk. Now, if you are working in an organization that is not very aggressive, people may not want to back your venture. But if you're working in an aggressive entrepreneurial organization, then you realize that many people within that organization will definitely back your proposal. We're saying that general management topics are skills that may be important in a project management setup, or some of the skills that you may need really as a project manager include the finance, because projects use money, yeah, and they also bring money. So you need to have a way of balancing this to ensure that the amount of money you use, carrying out a project is justifiable. There is a good return on investment. So finance skills are very, very important. There's also strategic planning. Remember, a project is managed within the context of a larger organization. And this organization, we are saying it is perpetual. We want it to be operational in the foreseeable future. So you must think strategically. Even when you're coming up with that project, you must have that strategic thinking aspect. Organizational structures, yeah, because you're working within a larger organization, you must ensure that there is that, hierarchy. Yeah, very, very important to be able to manage relationship. And that's what we are saying here in the fourth point, managing work relationships, very important. And then also personal management. How do you manage yourself as an individual, as a person? So we're saying that general management skills provide much of the foundation for building project management skills, which are essential for the project manager. So do not neglect the project or the general management skills just because you want to become a project manager. You need to have general management skills, which are going to provide a basis or a foundation for project management skills. So some of the management skills that you might need include leading. You must be a leader because you're dealing with people, establishing direction, aligning people, motivating and inspiring people. Projects are implemented by people, and being able to lead people is a very key and important skill. Communication, this involves exchange of information. The dimensions may include written, oral, listening, speaking, formal communication, vertical, horizontal, internal, external. All these are dimensions that you need to be very, very good at. Because we are saying that as a project manager, you want to do anything possible, anything within your power to ensure that that project is successful. And one key skill that you can't do without as a project manager is communicating. Negotiating, whether you're negotiating internally or externally, you will need negotiation skills. So this involves conferring with others to come to terms with them and reach an agreement. We are saying that agreements may be negotiated directly or with assistance. So as a project manager, remember, for example, we are talking of stakeholders who have different interests within that project. So for you to be able to bring them together and into an agreement, you need to have very, very good negotiation skills. Problem solving involves a combination of problem definition and decision making. We are saying in problem definition, we distinguish between cause and symptoms. Decision making includes identifying viable solutions and making achieves. You will always hit issues, challenges along the way. How you respond to those challenges to ensure that they do not compromise the integrity of the project or the integrity of the results of the project. Now, how you do that will determine how effective you are in project management. So we are saying that project management teams must understand current conditions and trends that may have a major effect on the project. So there are those trends that they're very critical to the project. And as a team, as a project management team, you need to understand and to be updated on these projects. Very, very important. Yeah, some of them include the standards and regulations, and we are saying that a standard is a document approved by a recognized body, document which lays down product, process, and service characteristics. For example, if you're building a project or you're developing a product, there is that regulatory body. For example, in Kenya, there is KEBS. You must ensure that whatever product you're developing is going to be approved. And therefore, that standard, that regulation is going to affect a project. So it's very, very important for you to be aware of some of these standards and regulations. Then there's also internationalization. And this refers to organizations engaging work that spans national boundaries. If, for example, you're working on a project to develop a new aircraft, you do not just have to worry about national regulations. You also have to worry about international regulations. For example, there is a wingspan that an aircraft cannot exceed because it is not going to be allowed in very many airports. Yeah, so that internationalization is also very, very critical. And there's also the cultural influences. And we're saying that culture refers to the totality of socially transmitted behavior patterns, arts, beliefs, institution, and all other products of human work and thought. And we're saying that virtually all projects planned and implemented in socio-economic context and have positive and negative impact. So you need to have knowledge with regard to the socio-cultural context within which you are operating or you are implementing that project. Because those cultures, those ways of life, those ways of doing things, whether within the organization or within the community that you're implementing your project, they are going to influence how successful that project is. So it is very, very important for you as a project manager and even the entire project team to be aware of the context within which that project is operating and how that context is likely to influence the outcome of the project. Welcome to topic number 3, project management processes. Now in this session, you will learn about the key project management processes and how they interact with each other. And by the end of this session, I should be able to describe how project management processes interact and also describe the process groups and how they interact with each other. So we are saying that project management processes can be organized into 5 groups of 1 or more processes each. So these include the initiating processes, planning processes, executing processes, controlling processes, and closing processes. So those are the key processes that that a project goes through, and we are going to look into each one of them to see exactly what they entail. So we're saying that process groups are linked by the results they produce. Okay, the output of one process often becomes the input of the other. Okay, for example, planning provides executing with a documented project early on, and then updates to the plan as the project progresses. So we are seeing that there is output from one project, which becomes the input of the subsequent project. The process groups are not one time, but overlapping activities which occur at different levels of intensity throughout each phase. So one of the mistakes that people make is that they think that there is the initiating that has a start date and an end date, and then you stop initiating, you go to planning, stop planning. No, it doesn't happen like that. They overlap. It's only that it happens in different intensities over the life of the project. So if you look at these linkages, you'll see that there is the initiating processes. Now, initiating processes feeds into planning processes. So whatever information that comes from initiating is fed into planning. Whatever comes from planning goes to executing, because the executing processes must have a plan, a document from which they're going to, do the execution. After executing, there is the closing. Yeah. Then after the closing, now of course the initiating all over again if there's a next project. So we have the initiating that feeds to planning. Once we plan, that feeds to executing. Once we execute, that feeds to closing. Now the controlling, there is controlling that happens at planning. There is controlling that happens at executing. There is controlling that happens at closing. Now, the kind of feedback you're getting on controlling during the executing processes, it is back and forth. So once you do your control, you're able to feed the information back to the executing. The executing processes makes any adjustment, then feeds back to controlling and all that. So this is how these processes interlink. Yeah, this is how they work together. So process group interactions also cross phases such that closing one provides input to initiating the next. Yeah, e.g. closing a design phase requires customer acceptance of the design document. And we're saying that in actual projects, there are also many overlaps, and that's what we said earlier. For example, the planning processes must not only provide details for the work to be done, but also work to be planned in controlling and closing phases. Yeah. So the plan has an input for executing, has an input for closing. It doesn't just have the input for executing. So I hope that is clear. We don't just say that there's no other place that the product of planning process can go apart from executing. No. Planning also gives some input to the closing. And this document really explains very well. And I would want you to, pause a little bit and just study this document or this graph. You realize that at the beginning of the project, the initiating processes, that is where they're at highest. There's a level of activity, and then there is the time. So start and finish. So early on, the level of activity for initiating processes is higher. As we move on, the planning processes, get more prominence. As the time goes on, the executing processes, have the highest, level of activity, and then finally the closing processes take preeminence. So you realize that the initiating and planning start almost at the same time. The controlling processes start all the way from the start of planning to the end of closing. So this is a document that is, or this is a graph that really helps us to understand how do these processes interact. And we are saying that, that's what we said here, that in actual projects, there are so many overlaps. And I think you're seeing these overlapping processes. And we are saying that the planning process must not only provide details for the work to be done, but also to plan and controlling. So what we are saying is that these processes are not, you start one, you end it, then you start the next. No, they overlap. And I hope that that part is clear. Now, we are saying that within each process group, the individual processes are linked by their inputs and outputs. By focusing on the links, we can describe each process in terms of the inputs, that is documents or documentable items that can be acted upon, the tools and techniques, and also the output. So those are some of the ways in which we can describe each of the processes. So initiating processes. Now, this is authorizing the project or phase. Is part of the project scope management. Yeah. So when we're talking about initiating, we are talking about the scope, and it feeds into the planning processes. Okay. So this is the point at which you are deciding what is the scope of my project? How big is it? How small is it? How many kilometers of the road do I need to build? How many floors of a building do I need to come up with? So very, very important. Then the planning, we are saying that this is an important step since it involves something that has not been done before. There may be many processes in this section. The amount of planning performed should be commensurate with the scope of the project and the usefulness of the information developed. Planning is an ongoing effort throughout the life of the project. Now, think about building a 2-bedroom house, the kind of planning that is required, and building the standard gauge railway that Kenya built some times back, the kind of planning, the amount of work that is involved. You'll see that those are two different, scopes of planning. Then controlling processes. We're saying that project performance must be monitored and measured regularly to identify variances from the plan. This is what monitoring and evaluation is all about. If the variances are significant, adjustment may be made to the plan by repeating the appropriate project planning processes. For example, a missed activity finish date may require adjusting to the current staffing plan. Reliance on overtime, trade-offs between budget and schedule objectives. Controlling also includes taking preventative action in anticipation of possible problems. You might look at a project and you realize, I thought I'm going to finish in 2 years, but the way it is going, I might finish in 3 or 4 years. So what do? I make a compromise. I might increase the budget so that I retain the schedule. So that is what controlling is all about. What about closing? This includes contract and administrative closure. You do not just leave a project hanging. Closing is very, very important, especially when it comes to humanitarian projects, when you have to hand over maybe your project or a building to the community. That process becomes very, very important. So there's the contract closeout, involves completion and settlement of the contract, including resolution of any open items. Administrative closure, this includes generating, gathering, and disseminating information to formalize phase of project completion, including evaluation or evaluating the project and compiling lessons learned for use in planning of future project or phases. So clothing is very, very critical because it also helps you learn on, the challenges maybe you faced, the shortcomings, and how to make the future projects much, much better. So the processes and interactions meet the test of general acceptance. They apply to most projects most of the times. However, not all processes will be needed on all projects, and not all interactions will apply to the project. So what we are saying is that whatever it is that we have talked about, it applies to most projects, but not all projects, follow the processes the way we've talked about them. So what we'll be looking at next is on project management knowledge areas, because we need to ensure that we have the right knowledge areas to ensure that we implement each of the processes the way it is supposed to be implemented. So it is very, very important for you to understand each of the processes and how to manage each one of them in a way that when they are all put together, they are going to contribute to the success of the project. How do you do that? By ensuring that you have a staff who have the right knowledge areas. And that's what we are going to be looking at in the next topic, so that you're able to handle all the aspects of the project. Welcome to topic number 2, the project management context. Now in this session, you will gain skills regarding the context in which projects are managed. And by the end of this session, you should be able to describe the environment in which projects operate, and also understand the cultures and trends that affect project management. So we are saying that projects don't operate in a vacuum, they operate in an environment or in a context. And that context, to a large extent, affects how we manage projects. So we're saying that projects and project management operate in an environment that is larger than the project itself. The project management team must understand the overall setup to ensure the success of the project. A simple example, if you're operating or if you're carrying out a project, there's an organization within which that project is being managed. So that organization is part of the larger environment. They are stakeholders. So we're saying that some of the key aspects include project phases, project stakeholders, organizational influences, like the way we just mentioned, management skills, socioeconomic and environmental influences. So these are some of the larger contexts or aspects within which projects operate. So when it comes to managing stakeholder expectations, we are saying that this may be difficult since they usually have different objectives. And when you're managing a project, you might want to ask yourself, what are some of the stakeholder expectations that you might want to really take into consideration? Who are the different stakeholders? Yeah? What are their needs? And how are you going to be able to make your project meet the needs of these stakeholders, or more or less really balance? And we have examples. For example, the manager of a department may wish to have a low-cost system. The solution architect may emphasize technical excellence, and the solution developer will be interested in maximizing its profit. So you're seeing 3 people with 3 different expectations. Head of the research at an electronics firm may define the success of a product on the state-of-the-art technology. That's one. The head of a manufacturing firm may define success around world-class practices. And the head of marketing may be concerned with the number of new features. So what we are saying is you need to manage the expectations of all these stakeholders. You need to balance them as the project managers. So we are saying that organizations also develop unique and describable cultures. These are reflected in shared values, norms, beliefs, and expectation in their policies and procedures. So you as a project manager, you are operating within a specific cultural context, the culture that has been developed within that organization. And we are seeing that examples of cultures that may influence the project include a team proposing high-risk approach may more likely secure approval in an aggressive or entrepreneurial organization. So you could be proposing a venture that is very high risk. Now, if you are working in an organization that is not very aggressive, people may not want to back your venture. But if you're working in an aggressive entrepreneurial organization, then you realize that many people within that organization will definitely back your proposal. We're saying that general management topics are skills that may be important in a project management setup, or some of the skills that you may need really as a project manager include the finance, because projects use money, yeah, and they also bring money. So you need to have a way of balancing this to ensure that the amount of money you use, carrying out a project is justifiable. There is a good return on investment. So finance skills are very, very important. There's also strategic planning. Remember, a project is managed within the context of a larger organization. And this organization, we are saying it is perpetual. We want it to be operational in the foreseeable future. So you must think strategically. Even when you're coming up with that project, you must have that strategic thinking aspect. Organizational structures, yeah, because you're working within a larger organization, you must ensure that there is that, hierarchy. Yeah, very, very important to be able to manage relationship. And that's what we are saying here in the fourth point, managing work relationships, very important. And then also personal management. How do you manage yourself as an individual, as a person? So we're saying that general management skills provide much of the foundation for building project management skills, which are essential for the project manager. So do not neglect the project or the general management skills just because you want to become a project manager. You need to have general management skills, which are going to provide a basis or a foundation for project management skills. So some of the management skills that you might need include leading. You must be a leader because you're dealing with people, establishing direction, aligning people, motivating and inspiring people. Projects are implemented by people, and being able to lead people is a very key and important skill. Communication, this involves exchange of information. The dimensions may include written, oral, listening, speaking, formal communication, vertical, horizontal, internal, external. All these are dimensions that you need to be very, very good at. Because we are saying that as a project manager, you want to do anything possible, anything within your power to ensure that that project is successful. And one key skill that you can't do without as a project manager is communicating. Negotiating, whether you're negotiating internally or externally, you will need negotiation skills. So this involves conferring with others to come to terms with them and reach an agreement. We are saying that agreements may be negotiated directly or with assistance. So as a project manager, remember, for example, we are talking of stakeholders who have different interests within that project. So for you to be able to bring them together and into an agreement, you need to have very, very good negotiation skills. Problem solving involves a combination of problem definition and decision making. We are saying in problem definition, we distinguish between cause and symptoms. Decision making includes identifying viable solutions and making actions. You will always hit issues, challenges along the way. How you respond to those challenges to ensure that they do not compromise the integrity of the project or the integrity of the results of the project. Now, how you do that will determine how effective you are in project management. So we are saying that project management teams must understand current conditions and trends that may have a major effect on the project. So there are those trends that they're very critical to the project. And as a team, as a project management team, you need to understand and to be updated on these projects. Very, very important. Yeah, some of them include the standards and regulations, and we are saying that a standard is a document approved by a recognized body, document which lays down product, process, and service characteristics. For example, if you're building a project or you're developing a product, there is that regulatory body. For example, in Kenya, there is KEBS. You must ensure that whatever product you're developing is going to be approved. And therefore, that standard, that regulation is going to affect a project. So it's very, very important for you to be aware of some of these standards and regulations. Then there's also internationalization. And this refers to organizations engaging work that spans national boundaries. If, for example, you're working on a project to develop a new aircraft, you do not just have to worry about national regulations. You also have to worry about international regulations. For example, there is a wingspan that an aircraft cannot exceed because it is not going to be allowed in very many airports. Yeah, so that internationalization is also very, very critical. There's also the cultural influences. And we're saying that culture refers to the totality of socially transmitted behavior patterns, arts, beliefs, institution, and all other products of human work and thought. And we're saying that virtually all projects planned and implemented in socio-economic context and have positive and negative impact. So you need to have knowledge with regard to the socio-cultural context within which you are operating or you are implementing that project. Because those cultures, those ways of life, those ways of doing things, whether within the organization or within the community that you're implementing your project, they are going to influence how successful that project is. So it is very, very important for you as a project manager and even the entire project team to be aware of the context within which that project is operating and how that context is likely to influence the outcome of the project. Welcome to topic 5, project risks or project risk management. Now, in this session, we will learn what project risks are or what project risks are and how we need to mitigate them. There is no project that does not have risks. Every project has a certain amount of risk. So how well we manage risks will to a large extent determine whether we become successful or not. So how do we mitigate risks? So by the end of this session, we should be able to describe the various project risks and also understand the mitigation measures for the various project risks that we will have identified. So what is a project risk? Or what is a risk, generally? We're saying that project risk is an uncertain event or condition. Now, if it occurs, it has a positive or negative effect on the project objective. Either it is going to affect the cost, maybe we are going to go over budget. It's going to affect time. Maybe we are going, we're not going to finish within the time that we were given, or even the quality of the project. When we are saying that a risk has a cost, and if it occurs, it's going to be a consequence. Yeah. So we're saying that in risk management, probability and impact or severity or how bad, the event is of the risks are considered. So you will ask yourself, how likely is the event? How likely is it to happen? And should it happen, how bad is it going to be? For example, if you're listening to me when you're inside the house, the truth is that the roof can collapse on you. That's a risk. You're taking a risk. Yeah, even the laptop or the phone that you're using, or whatever gadget you're using, we've had quite a number of them exploding because of issues with batteries. So you're also taking a risk. But the question is, how probable is that? How likely is that? And if it happens, how severe will it be? So the reason as to why you have your gadget in front of you and you're not worried is because you know the probability of it exploding or the probability of the roof collapsing is very low. Okay, so that is basically what risk management is. So what is project risk management? We are saying that project risk management includes the processes of conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, response planning, monitoring, and control on a project. We are saying that the objectives of project risk management are to increase the probability and impact of positive events and decrease the probability and impact of negative events in the project. And I think that is really self-explanatory. So project risk management processes are as follows. One, plan it, plan the risk management. Do not just jump into it. You need to have a plan. You need to have a way in which you want to approach the whole concept of risk management. Then identify the risks. What risks are most likely to happen, or what negative events are likely to happen? For example, when you're driving from one town to another, what are your risks? Accident, maybe you might the car might break down along the way. Those are some of the risks. So you have to identify them. Yeah, perform qualitative risk analysis. What is qualitative risk analysis? It is how terrible would it be? Yeah, to use a simpler term, how terrible would it be if the risk happens? Quantitative, what is the probability of that risk actually happening? You could, for example, look at you're walking in a dark alley and you're checking your risks, and you know that every night there is a mugging that takes place in that route that you want to use at night. So the probability is very high. But if you're walking in a well-lit street where you've not had any mugging in the last several years, and you're able to manage your risk very well. Then plan risk performance. What do you want to do in order to mitigate or to manage your risk? What are some of the approaches you're going to make? And then monitor and control the risks. You don't now just do all the other things, but you fail to monitor. Keep monitoring. If any of the parameters that we've talked about, whether it is the severity or the probability, if any of those changes, or you get more risks than you had identified earlier, then adjust your approach as appropriate. So when it comes to identification of risks, we are saying that identifying risk is the process of determining which risk may affect the project and documenting their characteristics. Ask yourself which risk is most likely to affect my project. then document the characteristics of that risk. Identifying risk is an iterative process because new risks may evolve and become known as the project progresses through its life cycle. We are saying that risk management plan is an input to this process. So as I had said earlier, something being iterative means it is not final. We cannot say that we have identified 5 risks and for the duration of the 5 years of that project, we are not going to do any further risk identification because risks change, new risks emerge. Yeah, the severity of the risks also changes. So it's a learning process. It's something that is ongoing. So some of the tools and techniques include the documentation reviews. You might realize that there are some projects that have been done before, and you're able to see how often, the negative effects or the negative events happened. Information gathering techniques, including brainstorming, Delphi technique, interviewing, root cause analysis. These are some of the, information gathering techniques that you can use to identify risk. Checking analysis, assumption analysis, risk diagramming techniques, SWOT analysis. So what we are saying is that whatever a tool or technique that you feel is appropriate for your specific situation or for your specific project, go ahead and use it. The important thing to note here is that risk identification process is not a final thing. It is not final. It is something that you keep on doing over time and you respond appropriately if things or situations do change. So what are some of the types of risks that might face a project? We are saying that organizations and stakeholders are willing to accept varying degrees of risk. So we cannot have a situation where nobody wants to take any risk. Yeah, as I said earlier, even us, we are taking risks, but to a particular degree. And we are saying that this is called risk tolerance. Risks may be accepted if the risks are in a balance with the reward that may be gained by taking the risk. And I hope that is self-explanatory. And we're saying that risk exists the moment a project is conceived, not at planning or at implementation or at monitoring. No, the moment you conceive a project, there's a risk. So we're saying that risk categories help organize, rank, and isolate risks within a project. Different risk categories can be identified as the time-based risks, either short-term risks or long-term risks, impact-based, either high impact or low impact, probability-based, high probability, low probability, or business risks, that is technical, quality, performance, project management risks, organizational risks, and external risks. So whatever it is, or whatever project it is that you are implementing, ensure you're able to identify risks and categorize them as appropriate, because these different categories require a different approach when it comes to mitigating the risk. So some of the risk response strategies include avoiding. You can avoid the risk through additional planning. You can mitigate, yeah. You can transfer, maybe insurance or subcontracting, and you can also accept, yeah. So when it comes to avoiding, some people think, well, that project, it's good, but the risk is too high. I don't want to do that project. Or I want to do something different, a different project. Mitigation, it is to a situation where we say, when the project happens, or when the risk happens, it is not going to have as much impact as it would have without me mitigating. It's just like when you're driving a car and you put on a safety belt. You're saying that, well, there could be an accident, yes, but if an accident happens, I'm not going to get hurt like if I didn't have the safety belt. Then transferring, of course, that is straightforward, maybe insurance, and accepting getting plan B and fallback plan. So risk response plan, ensure there's a list of risks. Yeah, there are risk takers and supervisors, risk analysis results, response per every risk. You need to say, for each of these risks that I have listed down, this is going to be the response, residual risk level, schedule and budget, alternative and backup plan. Supposing something, for example, something catastrophic happens, what alternatives do I have? What backup plans do I have? So the risk mitigation matrix, there is the cost of risk. Yeah. So we are saying that you can either reduce cost, you can mitigate risk. Yeah. So when it comes to reducing cost, you can either pool reserves or decentralize reserves. When it comes to mitigating, you can either pool reserves or decentralize. So we have cost of risk and the level of risk. So when the level of risk is high, when the cost is high and the level is low, then you pool resources. When the level is high and the cost is high, you pool reserves. Okay? So what we are saying is that it is very, very critical for you to ensure you understand your risks. Once you understand your risk, come up with a mitigation measure. Come up with an alternative. Come up with a way of ensuring that that risk is not going to jeopardize the implementation or the success of that particular project. And we said that you can either accept the risk, you can transfer the risk, you can mitigate the risk, or you can even transfer. You can, transfer that risk to somebody else. So what risks, would you say, for example, were present in the, the very recent project that you had, or the project that you're carrying out right now? And what are the mitigation measures that you either applied or applying now? Are they sufficient? What other new things do you think you might want to add? So ensure you manage your risks very well. Welcome to topic 6, and this is on project cost management. Now in this session, you will learn the ways and importance of managing project cost. And by the end of this session, you should be able to understand the concept of project budget and also the processes involved in cost management. So this is what we had said earlier on with regard to project constraints. And we said the quality of a project is a combination of the scope, time, and cost, or the budget. So when it comes to cost, it's probably one of the most important, because no one really wants their projects to go over budget. So what we'll be looking at in this topic is how do we ensure that our projects, remain within budget. So you cannot talk about cost management without the concept of the budget, because the budget is the one that gives you the cost. It's the one that gives you, that ceiling, tells you you can't go beyond this. So we'll be looking at ways of ensuring how do we not go beyond that particular ceiling. So what is a project budget? We're saying that a project budget is the total sum of money allocated for the particular purpose of the project for a specific period of time. So if it is 100 million for 6 months, that's a budget. Yeah, should be as simple as that. The goal of a budget or the goal of budget management is to control project costs within the approved budget and deliver expected project goals. So what we are saying is that we want to deliver the project goals within that budget that we have been given. So in as much as we may deliver the project goals, if we do not stick within the budget, then we will not have had a successful implementation of the project. So we are saying that a successful project is one that meets 4 criteria. That is a project scope, delivered on schedule, it is delivered within budget. Once delivered means meets quality expectations of the donor, and it meets quality expectations of the beneficiaries. That the people who are benefiting from that project, and also the person sponsoring that project, both of them need to be satisfied by that particular project. So we are saying that the reality is that most project managers spend most of their efforts on completing the project on schedule. They spend most of their time on managing and controlling the schedule and tend to forget about monitoring and controlling the budget, which is very, very risky. Because if your budget or if the money allocated for that particular project gets exhausted midway, then it is going to be a big challenge trying to source for more funds to complete that project. And I've seen this especially in humanitarian interventions, where people don't worry so much about how much is being spent, which is quite unfortunate. In fact, in some instances, you realize the more you spend within a very short time, the better it appears for you. But it's not supposed to be like that. You're supposed to ensure that even if you have been allocated more money than is necessary for the budget, for the project, you'd rather, have some money returning, going back to the donor. Because why would we want to not manage or control a budget? Money is a very scarce resource. Yeah. And whatever it is that you're using over the approved budget, it can be used to do something else more important. So it's very, very important that all of us are able, whether it is humanitarian or in the corporate world, or wherever it is, whether you're being pushed to work within the budget or not, your professionalism should, indicate to you the need to work within a budget. And wherever there are, you would have savings, or if you can get maybe materials at a cheaper price and all that, go for it. If the quality is okay, go for it. Yeah. So budget is very, very important. So what is budget or project cost management? We are saying that project cost management involves defining the total cost of the project, securing a budget, and then making sure that it is delivered within the approved budget. It relies on other planning processes such as scope management and resource allocation being done effectively. So sometimes if there's one person doing scope management and another person doing budget or cost management, these people need to work, hand in hand. Because if my scope is bigger, quote unquote, bigger than my budget, then there is no way that project is going to be completed. So we must have a way of working together to ensure that the scope and the budget, there is some reasonable interaction on that. So budget management consists of a series of tasks and steps designed to help manage the cost of the project. And the steps are defining the budget. You need to, understand how much money you have, or what budget or what level of budget you're working with. And that is resource planning and estimating costs. And really, you have to do this very, very well, because if you have the wrong estimations, then the variations are going to be so huge, and no one would be willing to really, supplement to such levels. And that is why you see in most third world countries, there are so many white elephants. A project was started, but because of poor estimation of cost, got to halfway, it never got completed because it sort of went over budget. But it's very, very important for you to estimate correctly. Whatever it is that, whatever project it is that you're implementing, do correct estimation. Then executing of the budget, controlling. You need to keep checking. If you realize that early on you're using or you're spending more than you had anticipated, initiate corrective measures so that you don't proceed with the deviation. Yeah, initiate corrective measures. Then keep updating the budget. If you feel that you might need to review your budget, go ahead and do that. Update it. It is not cast on stone. Yeah, keep updating it. When we are saying that these are done in project planning stage. So cost management answers the following questions. How much will the project cost? How much will it cost to build this house? Yeah? How much will it cost to build this road? How much will it cost to build this school or this classroom? Very important. How accurate is the estimate? And that is what we've said earlier. How accurate are your estimates? Because you must have very accurate estimates. As close to the true figure as possible. And how do you do that? How can you ensure that your estimates are accurate? I mean, you could, for example, talk to suppliers in advance. Let them give you price lists, the catalogs, and all that. Yeah, let them quote for goods that you need. Try to get to the source as much as you can, so that your estimates are as accurate as possible. We're saying that one of the keys to successful project completion is an accurate cost estimate and a realistic risk assessment. And I think earlier on we talked about the risk. So we're saying that project management processes include, you have to do resource planning, you have to do cost estimation, you have to do cost budgeting, and you have to do cost control. So those are some of the project cost management processes. So what we are saying is that as a project manager, one of your most important role and one of the key skills that you need is on managing the cost, because nobody wants to have a project that goes way over budget. If you have a reputation of implementing projects and they go over budget, no one wants to work with you. So ensure you have the right skills to manage your budgets well, and whenever possible, ensure that you implement your project within with a lot of efficiency. Few inputs and more outputs, and that is definitely going to give you a mileage when it comes to people wanting to work with you. Welcome to topic number 7, monitoring and evaluation of projects. So M&E, when it comes to project management, is very, very important because we need to be sure that whatever it is that we set out to achieve, we have actually achieved it. So in this session, you will learn ways and importance of monitoring and evaluating projects. And by the end of the session, you should be able to understand the importance of M&E in projects and also understand who should do monitoring and evaluation. And I would encourage you to seek more information with regard to monitoring and evaluation because that is an entire course on its own. But it is also very, very important to have the basics with regard to monitoring and evaluation because you cannot have a project if you're not doing M&E on that particular project. So what is monitoring and what is evaluation? And what's the difference? You're saying that monitoring is the routine tracking of program activities by measuring on a regular, ongoing basis, checking whether planned activities are being carried out. It tracks the actual performance against what was planned or expected in reference to predetermined standards, targets, and assesses the extent to which targets have been achieved. Quite wordy, but we will look at it and see what exactly that one means. Now, evaluation, on the other hand, is a periodic collection of activities that uses scientific methods to determine a program's effect or specified outcomes, that is short-term results, at least 2 years, and impacts 5 years and over. It focuses on whether the program has had the intended effect on the target communities. Now, in simple terms, monitoring, we are checking the activities. It's a routine checking, it's a routine tracking of program activities. For example, we are building a house. Let me still give that example because it's easier for everyone to understand. Building a house. We want to know how many bags of cement did we use today? How many do we need for tomorrow? How many people or how many bricklayers did we employ today? Were they enough? Do we need to add more tomorrow? Or do we need to have less tomorrow? If we keep on hiring 30 bricklayers, are we going to complete this project on schedule or on budget? Okay. Now, evaluation is what we call periodic collection of activities. They use scientific methods to determine a program's effect on specified outcomes. Now, evaluation is about looking at the outcomes. What was the outcome? For example, 2 years. We wanted this project to achieve these particular outcomes. Were they achieved? And if they were, to what extent were they achieved? Okay. So, and another mistake that people make is that they think evaluation only comes at the end of the project. Not necessarily. You can have phases. You can do evaluation in different phases of the project. So I hope you understand the difference between monitoring and evaluation. So what is the purpose of monitoring and evaluation? Number one is to identify the constraints or bottlenecks that hinder a project in achieving its objectives and enabling corrective action. Then it also builds accountability. We're saying that it enables project planners and implementers to assess the benefits and costs that accrue to the intended direct and indirect beneficiaries of the project. Then it also aids in strategic management. We are saying it is essential for drawing lessons from the project implementation experience and using the lessons in planning other projects. It also enables demonstration of results or impact and documentation of project achievements. The fourth one would be very, very key because if, for example, you are working on a donor-funded project, you want to communicate your results, you want to communicate your impact, you want to package your success in a way that will ensure continued support of your project. And you can only do that if you're doing monitoring and evaluation very well. So when it comes to operational management or implementation, M&E helps to track progress and provide information needed to coordinate the human, financial, physical resources committed to the project or program. The same example we gave earlier on, how many bricklayers do we need? How many will we need tomorrow? Do we need to increase the ones we had today, or do we need to reduce? Also providing feedback, at various stages of the project to the donors, implementers, beneficiaries of the project, and the like. So people who are benefiting or people who are interested in the project, they want to keep getting feedback. And you can only give credible feedback if you do monitoring and evaluation. It also helps to support decision-making and understanding of dynamics of the project or program being implemented. Again, if we realize that we are not, moving with the speed that we had anticipated, we can make decisions. Maybe increasing the personnel, increasing the material, or that kind of thing, so that we can, speed up the implementation process. So, and you can only make that decision if you're doing monitoring and evaluation. So some of the key benefits of M&E includes the improves project or program design through feedback from baseline, midterm, terminal, and ex-post evaluation. So these evaluations, they keep on improving the program. If, for example, we do a baseline survey, we are able to understand exactly where we are, and we will know the interventions that are needed for us to move from the baseline to our target or to where we want to get. Yeah? It informs and influence sector and country assistance strategy through analysis of the outcomes and impact of interventions and the strengths and weaknesses of the implementation. So we are saying that M&E also influences sector or country assistance strategy, because we are able to analyze the outcomes and impact of interventions. We are going to say this intervention gives this impact. This one doesn't give, doesn't result to an impact. We're able to know what works. So if I am going to implement a project in some country, I am able to know what works and what doesn't work, because the people there have been doing monitoring and evaluation. Yeah, it also provides evidence basis for building consensus between stakeholders. Some people would say, for me, this is what success looks like in the context of this project. Another stakeholder will say this, another one will say that. But if you have very good M&E data, you are able to bring them together and build a consensus where they are going to say, for all of us, this is what success looks like. It builds knowledge capital by enabling governments or organizations to build a knowledge base of the types of programs and projects that are successful. It enables one to know what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's what we said a few minutes ago. May have beneficial spillover effect on other parts of the government, and also provides regular feedback on project performance and shows need for mid-course corrections. It also identifies problems early and proposes solutions. We don't want to identify issues when the damage has already occurred. Yeah? Monitor access to project services and outcomes by target population, helps in that, and also evaluate achievement of project objectives. How well are we able to achieve our objectives? And also incorporating stakeholder views and promote participation, ownership, and accountability. There's something we call a participative monitoring and evaluation, where everyone comes together and decides what success looks like to them. That participative approach is very, very important. So who should perform monitoring and evaluation? Now, sometimes it is done by internal staff, or that's what we call self-evaluation. And we are saying that the same people implementing the project, they could do the evaluation. Sometimes it is done by external evaluators, and we are saying the evaluation is conducted by an individual or a group outside the implementing organization. Yeah. In most cases, it is done by an external evaluator, but with help from an internal person, or it is done by the internal team with a lot of input from an external consultant. Yeah. So sometimes that one also happens. But also in some cases, it is an independent evaluation undertaken by individuals or group who are not only outside the implementing organization, but also completely independent in terms of control, remuneration, capacity, political pressure, or other factors that could affect objectivity. So sometimes you find that there are stakeholders who want the person doing the evaluation to be completely independent. They are not hired by the implementing partner, they are not paid, they don't report to the implementing partner and all that. And that, of course, enhances objectivity. So that is what monitoring and evaluation is. And as I said, this is a very comprehensive topic. And as a project manager, you will definitely need to seek more knowledge, more information on monitoring and evaluation, because that's something that you will need going forward.